Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, April 7th meeting of the Human Services Committee. Staff, if you could please take the roll.
Councilmember Revelle?
Here.
Councilmember Burns? Councilmember Reed? Councilmember Harris?
Present.
Councilmember Herrick Harris?
Here. Seeing that we have a quorum and we're ready to do our work, we will start off the meeting. First item is the approval of minutes of the regular meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
I move approval of the minutes of our February 5th meeting. Second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on the minutes? I think for this one, we'll take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Revelle?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Herrick Harris?
Aye. We have a 3-0 that passed. And now we will move on to public comment. I have 5 folks up for public comment. First on the list is Kevin Brown.
Oh, thank you so much. Just want to speak on HS 4, which is Resolution 32R25, approval of the honorary street name sign designation. And just to the esteemed members of Human Services Committee, I'm here tonight to support the naming of a street in honor of former Mayor Elizabeth Tisdall, who is a visionary leader whose legacy has touched the lives of many thousands of Evanston young people. And under her leadership, the city's youth engagement strategy came alive. She expanded the mayor's summer youth employment program to unprecedented levels, earning national recognition and providing pathways to job, skills, and dignity for our young residents. Mayor Tisdall didn't just believe in young people, she invested in young people. She built lasting partnerships with schools, nonprofits, and employers, and laid the foundation for a youth and young adult division that continues to serve as a lifeline for at-risk youth. Her bold vision extended to affordable housing, ensuring Evanston remained a place working families could call home. She championed entrepreneurial equity, opening doors for small minority and women-owned businesses to grow. And she deepened our city's partnership with Northwestern University, leveraging the Good Neighbor Fund to support workforce development, public safety, and infrastructure. Mayor Tisdall's vision made Evanston more just, more compassionate, and more prepared for the future. Naming a street in her honor affirms that legacy for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the list is Nikki Pearson.
Good evening, members of the Human Services Committee, Mr. Agbo, the director. We're here this evening. Mary Gavin and I are here. I didn't even see you come up here. Thank you for considering the application for an honorary street name for a former mayor, former council member, and former District 202 school board member, Elizabeth Tisdall. Because we wish to be respectful of your time, we won't even try to list all the things she has done for the Evanston community, but here are a few. When she was elected mayor of Evanston in 2009, she continued the tradition of strong female mayors. She is the only mayor who has previously been elected to serve on a school board, District 202, and on the city council, 7th Ward. While she raised her family here, she served as co-president of the King Lab PTA, She coached 3rd and 4th grade co-ed softball teams for 12 years. She volunteered with ESCA for 13 years and was a member of Mothers Against Gangs. Mary?
She's contributed to many Evanston not-for-profit organizations. Here are some of her accomplishments as mayor, although Mr. Brown gave a wonderful speech enumerating them better than I can. She strengthened the relationship between the community and Northwestern University. She worked with Senator Dick Durbin and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky to procure federal funding to bring a branch of the Erie Family Health Center to Evanston. She expanded sales of water to 5 communities, resulting in additional revenue for the city. We hope that you'll approve of the application for an honorary street name for this outstanding resident of Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Payton.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tina Payton, and my family has lived in the same home since 1915. And I've lived there all my life. I'm here to support HS7, the property tax circuit breaker. There's many people here that live in Evanston that are seniors and marginalized persons, the Black community, myself being included. Many of my neighbors, well, I don't have any neighbors because the city took my neighbors back in the 80s and early 90s. But there's many of us still here that would like to remain. And we're being priced out by property tax. Now, I just mentioned that we've been in the house since 1915. And we may not be able to stay because the property taxes are too high. And it seems that if we've been in a house for over 100 years, we should not be subjected to elimination because of property tax. Now, the elephant in the room, as usual, is Northwestern University, who owns 240 acres of property here in Evanston that they don't pay taxes for. And as a result, we pay, which doesn't somehow seem fair that they continue to flourish and we have to worry about not being here. Our new administration is talking about cutting Social Security, which some people that own homes in Evanston, that's all they have. And they will not be able to pay the property tax, and they will be eliminated because they cannot pay. And they may have lived here for 50, 60, 70 years, and it doesn't matter. So it would seem to this committee that you would say that matters, because some people ran for their position to say that they wanted to preserve the people that lived here a long time. So I'm going to look for you to say that. I do need to read something. I Googled this earlier. Living in Evanston is costlier than living in the city of Chicago. The cost of living in Evanston, which averages $21.24 a month for an individual, and $5,382 for a family of 4. Ranks in the top 4% of the most expensive cities in the world. That was shocking to me when it said in the world. So if you really care about the long-term Evanston residents, you would support this program and see that it moves forward. I also provide housing for families. And if I don't get help, then I can't help affordable families because I won't be able to afford it either. So it's very imperative that you support this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ray Friedman.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to run down the agenda real quick. HS3, protection of trees, I agree with, as long as they're trees that are owned by the city. If they're privately owned, that should be up to the private owner what to do with those trees. So I vote no on HS3. HS4, yes, of course. I have Elizabeth Tisdale Way. It's a great way to honor her. HS5, yes. Fair employment projects, practices, I'm sorry. Fair employment practices, yes. And the tax circuit breaker, like Tina just said, it's a good idea to help people that want to stay in Evanston, who is, like she said, which is one of the most expensive suburbs. And really, I wanted to see today, welcome to our first meeting at the new council hall, which I totally disagree with, and don't see why we're wasting money on rent when we can buy whatever. We own property in Evanston, we don't need to rent. So wasting $37.5 million on this particular building and having people walk 2 blocks from the garage to get here is ridiculous. What you're doing is you're keeping people out of City Hall. You should be welcoming people to come here, have their voices heard, and be a part. You're just doing the opposite and costing us millions of dollars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to folks that have signed up online. First up, we have Mr. Sutton. Is he on the Zoom or is he here? Down here. We have written comment by Malika Gardner. Do you want to come to the podium?
I'll read it so I don't go over like I did at Finance and Budget and get straight to the point instead of speaking from the heart, but know that this is from my heart. So good evening. My name is Malika Gardner. For the past 10 years, I've worked in community engagement across Evanston and Chicago, elevating resident voices, advancing equity, and co-authoring education legislation that was passed back in 2021 by Governor Pritzker. I listen to the community. It's what I've been doing since I moved back here. I grew up here in Evanston, graduated ETHS, so I've heard the voices, I've heard the cries, and instead of just constantly telling the stories, it's time to do something, and that's why I got more involved in legislation. So after getting state legislation passed, I figured it's time to do something right here in my own backyard. And my heart is actually aching for a lot of people here in Evanston that helped to build Evanston, that have been here for decades, and they had planned to age in place. This was their plan, was to raise their family and retire here in Evanston. I'm here tonight because longtime Evanston residents, especially seniors on fixed incomes, are reaching out in fear. Not fear of change, but fear of being left behind. They don't qualify for the senior freeze or the exemption, but they're still struggling. And we don't get to have local solutions for them. We haven't had one yet. The property tax and rent circuit breaker program is that solution. It was born from real conversations with Evanston residents who have been here for decades, many aging in place, but unsure how much longer they can afford to stay here. This program doesn't oppose new development. Where's Bobby? It doesn't oppose new development or new taxpayers coming into Evanston. We don't want to block that kind of progress or that kind of growth. It's not about slowing down growth. It's about making sure the residents who helped to build this city, who shaped this culture, raised their families here, and paid into its future aren't forgotten in the process. This program is still researched. We're still doing the work. We don't have all the data yet, but we owe it to the public to let this process continue. Let the facts speak for themselves. I respectfully ask that the committee table this for now, not to delay progress, but to get it right, because we can get this right, and then everyone wins. Let's show our longtime residents that we still see them. Let's lead with care and not just numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, we have Darlene Cannon. Is she online or? Let's see, she's here. All right. Next up is Fran Joy. Okay, we'll move on down the list. Tricia Conley. That's nobody on Zoom. Okay. Well, we have staff looking into that. Next up, Meg Welch. There's nobody on Zoom? We'll see. And then Linda Demishak. And I guess we'll pause for a second here. Nicole, do you don't have anybody in the Zoom? We'll take a short pause here while we figure out some potential technical issues.
Well, it's the first meeting. Yeah. Huh? No, we'll make it eventually. Yeah, I know. You mean the outlets? You're not getting any charge? Why don't you charge from the second? Okay, you are. Yeah, I'm not getting any. No, they're working. Okay. Mine's fine. Mine.
If we can add
Trisha Conley is here.
Okay. We'll move down the list again here. So we'll have a public comment from Trisha Connolly.
Thank you. I'm not sure what's going on, but this was really difficult to get on. There's no link on your agenda, and nothing was sent to me in advance. So I hope that can be resolved for others too. I'm calling tonight on H7, and I want to state that I'm in full support of Malika Gardner and Councilmember Kelly's referral to research a property tax circuit breaker program. Affordability is not going to be donated to us by the private market. We need to take some action. As a city, we need to do this as soon as possible to assist our long-term residents who are at risk of displacement. Unfortunately, we have yet to discuss a strategic housing plan or have conversations as a community about what we will do to lessen the threat of people losing their homes, whether they rent or they own them. Therefore, it's upon us to act soon as possible to implement a plan so that existing long-term...
Melissa again. So we'll have a public comment from Trisha Connolly.
Thank you. I'm not sure what's going on, but this was really difficult. Oh, God, what happened?
Trisha, you still there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. There was a little bit of, I think, kind of feedback from your end.
Okay, sorry about that. I apologize.
No worries.
I'm calling in regard to H7. I'm in full support of Malika Gardner and Councilmember Kelly's referral to research a property tax circuit breaker program. Affordability in Evanston is not going to be donated by the private market. It is upon us as a city to take action as soon as possible to assist our long-term residents who are at risk of displacement. Unfortunately, we have yet to discuss a strategic housing plan or to have a conversation as a community about what we will do to lessen the threat of people losing their homes, whether they rent or they own them. It is important we act soon as possible to implement a plan so existing long-term residents have the ability to stay in our community. Please forward this referral on to the Finance and Budget Committee this evening. This is urgently needed. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It looks like we only have one person in the Zoom. So folks that signed up for public comment, staff will email you and you can submit your written comment, and that will come to all the committee members and we will read those. So moving along, we now at item HS2, Health and Human Services 2024 Annual Report. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seeing we have this up, so we have a second. Do we have any discussion on the report? Okay. No, we don't have lights. I think just have to make eye contact or wave my. So, Councilmember Ravel.
I just have a quick question. I didn't see any mention of the, I guess I'm going to call it the wellness program that we approved about, sometime during the last year. I was wondering what the status of that is.
Absolutely. I can comment on that. It is a program that we continue to work on. We're currently in the design phase, and the hope is that it will be established in a few months. We've engaged quite a number of partners that will help us ensure that this program comes to fruition. So we're still working out the kinks of the program.
Okay, seeing no further comments, can we take a vote?
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion has been accepted and placed on file. We're going to have a quick departure from our agenda order to accommodate discussion of the tree item. Can I have someone move HS8, please? And we'll have a presentation from staff.
Yeah, move item HSA, tree preservation ordinance for private property and variation decision guidelines for discussion.
Okay, it's been properly moved. If we can have presentation from staff. Thanks.
Oh, there it is. Committee Chair, Council members of the Human Services Committee, Director Angela Lavernier, Tree Preservation Coordinator. So in February, we were asked to put together a memo. So we thought it would be helpful to have a few slides discussing or going through the history of the ordinance and how it's been implemented in the past year, and then get into the standards. So the Climate Action Resilience Plan, of course, was passed in 2018, which has an urban canopy and green space action. A few years later, when the ordinance was being written, it was the Environmental Board's recommendation to have 3 goals: protect trees 6 inches in diameter and above, protect trees against damage, ultimately during construction projects or building permits, and protect trees from removal if it's unnecessary. And then there was an additional universal goal, of course, no undue burden on financially vulnerable property owners. So the basis of the ordinance, these statistics in the top are kind of regional statistics. So 7 out of 10 trees are on private property. 75% of trees are under 20 inches in diameter. And large trees are exponentially more beneficial, and that's because of their large canopy. So in reviewing this, the basis was the small and medium trees would need protection until those large trees age out, and then they would be there to replace it. And then, of course, in the inverse, large trees would need protection until those small, medium trees got large to replace them. So, and then, of course, this includes tree preservation reviews during construction. So that would protect trees of all size classes. So what the ordinance does is it protects the benefits and services that the trees provide. Trees, because they're such long-lived, we have some trees that are 350 years old in the city of Evanston. They're treated more like infrastructure. So like roads, sewers, and they're really the only infrastructure that the benefits increase over time. So with that being said, preserving the tree canopy, because climate change is here, So preserving that shade is needed. The microclimate effects of large mature trees is very important, preserving it. And it's, like I said before, establishing the tree canopy until the smaller trees can fill in. And from arborist perspective, the benefits of an urban forest are much greater when you protect it as a whole than when you protect individuals. And they're more resilient. So I think this is how we're used to seeing trees. We drive through Evanston, street trees. We have huge, large canopy trees intermixed with small trees. But honestly, this is how we should be looking at the urban forestry canopy. So in this aerial, it's very evident to see the larger trees because they have larger canopies and they're intermixed. And you can see the street trees, but in this snapshot, and we actually didn't do this on purpose, the majority of trees are on private property in this scenario. So implementing what we've been doing for the past year, it's pretty straightforward. If a homeowner wants to remove, they can apply for a standalone permit. They call their tree care company. They come out and do a site assessment, record the diameter, species. They might take pictures. They talk to the homeowner, is it disease or hazardous? And then they apply for a permit. And then, as we've discussed in the past, that's when the city arborist comes out. They review that material, kind of assess the tree and make sure it coincides. And then if we need more information, communication goes back and forth. If the removal of the permit, if the tree is not diseased, dead, or hazardous like we've discussed in the past, then they can appeal to the Human Services Committee. So this is a quick diagram that we put together. It looks very busy, but it's actually pretty straightforward. If the property owner is doing construction, they apply for a building permit. Tree preservation is reviewed during that whole process. If they're not, if they want to apply for a standalone permit for a tree removal, essentially it gets treated, is the tree dead, disease, or invasive? We do have an invasive category. If it is, then the permit is approved. If it's not, then that's where it's kicked to the Human Services Committee. So this then gets us to the standards that were briefly discussed in February. So there's 5 of them. We can go through these individually. 3 and 4 are very similar, and I don't think they're as site-specific to a tree as standards 1, 2, and 5. So I think when these variances come in, I think those are the important standards that would be reviewed. So as a practical difficulty, is it not self-created? I think that's always going to be a site-specific category that would be discussed. The requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or values of the adjoining properties. Again, that's going to be very site-specific. And then the last one, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified. Pretty lengthy one, but in this case, it's like, is the tree being removed or if it's not being removed? So it's kind of either or. And that's pretty much we put together, and then we figured there would be a discussion.
Great, thank you. Do we have any comments from my colleagues up here? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you so much. So as mentioned before, I know one of the problems that my residents in the Second Ward have been coming to me is that there are insurance companies that are flying drones, and trees are huge over property, and they are losing their policies, or the rate is going up exponentially. So how do we equate for that without being a financial burden for them to take down the tree, whether it's diseased or not, and comply with the insurance agencies that are, I've had 2 resident, I think 3 that have been dropped already, and now had to go to a new insurance company for help.
Yeah, when I first started, I actually got quite a few calls from residents that were upset because they didn't want to cut down their trees. They thought this was, their insurance policy was doing this. And I learned this is pretty across the board. I think as insurance, I don't want to speak out of tone, but I think as they're trying to, pinch dollars, this is one way they're doing it. And all over Evanston, we have trees over houses, over structures. It doesn't make them hazardous. I think it just makes people scared of their trees. But I would always recommend, and this is what I did on the phone when they would call, they could get a tree risk evaluation done. If it comes back low risk, they could provide that to the insurance company.
But I think part of what I'm hearing is it doesn't matter. The insurance company is not taking our evaluation into consideration with what they're trying to accomplish. Like you said, cut costs, create a higher cost for the resident, because that's really what it's doing. They're saying because of this tree, imminent danger, and so we have to raise you or drop you.
Yeah. I think, I never got a single permit that I know of that came in that way. But yeah, if we went out and assessed it and we didn't see that it was a hazard, the permit would not be approved. So there is that part of it too.
I have one quick question. Could you speak to the number of applications for tree removal we've received as a city, and how many variances so far have we received in our intake, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have the 2 permit processes, through the building. I'm just like, a city arborist is a reviewer, just like, building reviewer or something. And then these standalone permits, and they're almost equal. It's about 250. And the majority of trees in those standalone permits are trees aging out in the canopy. So off the top of my head, I don't know the exact number, but probably 10 or 15 the permits have not been approved, and 2 variances have been submitted out of those.
Okay, so my quick math is it'd be about 5% have not been approved, and then we're running about a 2%.
Right. Yeah.
Do we expect to have a higher volume of permits related to construction? Is this like a normal amount of work that we're seeing, or because I also kind of anecdotally had some folks say, well, this is going to people kind of rushing to get tree work done before we enacted this. I don't know if so is this like a normal amount of variances that we'll be hearing here? Because personally, I think I don't want the less subjective items that come before us. I think the better. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out for my own judgment, like how often are we going to see these, and kind of get a handle on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the building permits obviously are going to go up and down according to the economy. The standalone permits, I really don't know how many variations are going to come in. I always have a conversation with them about the tree risk. They can always get a tree risk assessment by a qualified tree risk assessor to gather more information. So that's always an option. Until that information comes to us, they can deem not to go through that process and apply for a variation. So it's a good question. I think it's a new ordinance and they're kind of feeling it out.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Ravel.
Well, to follow up on Councilmember Harris's question, how much does it cost to have that tree risk
Yeah,
assessment?
we did start calling around because I figured this might come up. I did speak to a little bit, and I think I should have finished following up on that because I would like to have more concrete answers. It's not as high as I thought it would be actually for Cook County when we called around. So I can definitely call around, get a few, and come back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be useful information for us. It helps us understand what we're asking
Right.
of our residents.
Yeah, and I always recommend to homeowners, just like anything, get 3 quotes.
Right.
And
yeah, for any kind of tree care.
right, exactly, yeah.
Well, as we're gathering data about, or collecting data to share with, let's say, with Human Services about the requests that are coming in to you, it might be interesting to also check in with some of our North Shore neighbors, because a lot of them now have tree preservation ordinances, and to see, is our experience here in Evanston similar to Wilmette's or Highland Park?
Right, yes, we can certainly do that.
Great. Do you have any questions as far as going forward for staff? Is there any more clarification other than our kind of request for more information?
No, I think general feedback, what would be useful for you as I'm communicating to the homeowner, if they do decide to apply for a variation, what they should be putting in the application or.
Yeah, and I think I'll just piggyback on what Councilmember Revelle said about having a side-by-side comparison. Maybe if we can get that, so we can kind of compare what other folks have seen, and so I think that'll help. We kind of try to land on best practices for this. So
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
And Councilmember Revelle.
One more. As we're checking in with some of our neighboring communities about their experience, I'd be interested in knowing what kind of standards they look at when they're reviewing a request for a variation, because the standards that are in the memo, I think, are more applicable to property development kind of things rather than a tree preservation ordinance. So.
Right, they are very some of the standard, like the first one is very community development based, standard, right?
Yeah, so maybe if because as Councilmember Harakaris said, doing the subjective kind of evaluation is really hard for us, and so if we could see other examples of standards to look at, that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, and I did want to make one point when you were talking about the numbers. If you figure Tree Evanston's, they know how many street trees there are, 33,000 or 34,000. So that would leave 65,000 private trees. So the number of permits coming in for removals is way less than 1%. So to kind of put that in perspective, for the number of the trees that are out there.
Great. Well, this has been helpful. One last thought I just had. It'd be great as we move forward to maybe have some sort of rubric we could maybe plug in some numbers to help us, kind of assess what we're looking at for each of these cases.
I think we'll need concrete thoughts of what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, when I've looked at the ones that have come through, for me, it's like the tree size, diameter, the desirability of the species of the tree, also like other factors like proximity to the home, because I know just as a homeowner myself, we removed a tree that was like 4 feet from one of our doors, which was never planted there, and but some of those kind of baseline things I think would be kind of helpful.
There are, yes, and I will speak to almost all the permits that I review, and a lot of the urban forests in Evanston, trees were not planted. They have just seeded in and grown up, and it kind of speaks to, that's what an urban forest does, right? We have a lot of street trees, they seed in and they grow. So I do see a lot of permits where the trees are not planted. They're there. They've lived their life, they've aged out, and now they're being removed.
Great. Well, this has been very helpful. And so I think we're all set to move on to HS3, if I could have a motion.
Yeah, I move item HS3, variation request for ordinance 15023, protection of trees on private property. For action.
We have it's been properly moved, and we've been told that the homeowner is here and will come to speak.
I hate speaking in public. I'm Christina. I'm the elm tree lady. And first of all, I love the work that we're doing with the elm trees. And I think our environment's really, really important. I have over 9 trees on my property. And this little guy was a volunteer, so it kind of planted itself there. It was pretty cute when it was little. I bought my parents' property, and it just grew and grew and grew, and it was doing real great right under the big maple. And then as it's gotten larger, it's kind of taken off to kind of reach for sunlight. So it's reached off to the west, and it's leaning now over my neighbor's garage. And because it's not an imminent danger, because it's not rotting, it's not uprooting, I'm unable to remove it. My concern kind of comes from just, I think, being a responsible homeowner. And, if you know when your roof is going to age, right? You know when you're going to start needing a roof replacement. And I think same thing goes when we're looking at our properties and the trees. And this is a tree that, I feel like I got 3 quotes. We all feel like it's going to just continue. I think you even said like it's going to continue to reach out over my neighbor's garage. It's leaning roughly at like a 45-degree angle now. It's young, but as it ages, it's going to continue to do that. And I think it's going to get more and more expensive for me as a homeowner. We're just talking about prices of our property taxes. I pay my property taxes, and I feel like I should be able to remove this thing before it gets huge. I've already kind of done some upfront work. I really like the presentation in regards to like, we have the large trees and we need to also plant other trees, to kind of replace them. So just but also I think in a responsible way, not 3 feet from the front door of your house. So I've planted an oak tree far off on the other side of the property, outside of the kind of canopy of my maple. And then also, it's not just always about like the really large canopy trees, but like some of the smaller kind of understory trees as well. So I planted a cherry tree, a dogwood tree. I have a rosebud. I have an apple tree. I want to plant another apple tree too. So just kind of the importance of like all the different kinds of trees like on our properties as well to kind of provide homes. So I think it's important to kind of balance that. And I think like when you're speaking about a rubric, it's really hard to put a rubric on like each property and what each property brings. And I feel like I've done my part in planting other trees. And this is one that I'm not comfortable with where it is and its trajectory. And so I feel like pulling it out and kind of putting some other things in a better location would ultimately help our environment. And so that's why I'm looking to have it removed. So it's an elm, which also, if anybody knows, there's a lot of Dutch elm disease. And so it's really, really picky about when you need it pruned. So preferably, I think between November and April, which is like now, I should have it pruned. And so same thing, when it starts having branches, I really need to get pruned up, and you have to be really, really careful with that with my neighbor's garage as well.
Great. Thank you. Well, you may have questions, but I'll look to my colleagues. Anyone have any comments?
Yeah, I'll kick us off.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, absent a rubric, like you said. I mean, some of the things that are on my mind is one, it sounds like there's other trees, even larger trees on the property. I think that's something that we will want to take into consideration. It's possible that there's some scenarios where someone will want to remove a tree of this size and there's really little to no other trees on the property. So as we think about canopy, amount of trees that we have, I think that's something that's important. The fact that it sounds like it's smaller, I think you said 15 inches in diameter. I think catching it earlier makes sense to me. I think we mentioned that we want to really make sure we're protecting and preserving the larger trees in particular, because the smaller trees can be replanted potentially in better locations. So there's a lot about this variation that I like. Again, it sounds like there's other trees on the property, larger trees on the property that are already providing a canopy for the structures, the garage, the main house, etc. It's small in diameter. It can be easily removed. And it sounds like there's already been other trees replanted on the property. So again, absent a rubric, there's things about this that, I think I'm more inclined to support a variation under these circumstances than maybe others. But like to know what how my colleagues feel.
I don't see any other hands, so I'll just jump in. This was, and I lose count of how many variations we've had come before us, but this one, I think the homeowners has shown some care to plant other trees and be thoughtful about the impact of removing this one. I'm inclined to, grant the variation request. Again, this is hopefully it looks like we'll depending on what happens in the future, we'll always have a small number of these kind of trickle down to us. But this one was a relatively easy decision from myself. So I will see if anyone else has any comments. Councilmember Ravel.
Well, I guess I'd say it's a difficult decision. One of the standards that I think we want to be considering is one that you mentioned about, what group tree is this? This is an A group, which is, one of our most valuable. I like the idea that you planted an oak tree. That's obviously a super A tree. I guess, the question is with careful pruning, this elm tree could probably do very well for quite a while. So I'm not finding it an easy decision.
Yeah.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes, I totally agree. And I don't want to start in an arbitrary fashion where I appreciate the apple trees and the rosebud. It's hard. I think it's hard. I know you said it was easy, but I want us to go down a path that we're sure and that we can live with for everything and not have variations on how we decide. I know rubric, as you mentioned, has the potential to be different for each property, but I think if we have something that keeps us on the straight and narrow, that keeps us keeping certain things in mind, it makes it easier for us to justify when we don't allow somebody to do something more than when we do. So I also find it kind of like stuck between a rock and a tree.
So Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I guess from staff's perspective, is there any concern about the direction in which the tree is growing? Does that make it more vulnerable to certain things?
We have leaning trees all over the city.
Yeah.
Actually, after this came in, I tried to pay more closer attention to them, and leaning tree by itself is not a hazard. If something happens, if you did construction and you cut the stability roots, if the site becomes more saturated and the roots might uplift, and like the homeowner said, the tree started growing like this because there's an older maple on the property. Now this elm tree might actually outlive the maple. because of how the species go. The trunk will stay at that angle forever. Now the limbs, as it grows above the tree next to it, it could straighten out. So structural pruning might happen, but it is a lifelong, you do have to monitor leaning trees. You do have to look at those. I mean, if you're getting your tree pruned regularly, the tree care company is probably going to point out something if it becomes hazardous.
And how difficult is it to prevent Dutch elm disease?
It's so I believe this is actually a cultivar, so they're a little more resistant, but when a cultivar seeds in, it might be less resistant. So the city treats their elm trees every year, every 2 years. So it's up to the homeowner. Some do that, some do not do that.
How effective is the treatment? Do we have a sense of how many we're saving or losing, whichever one?
Do you know off the top of your head? It's a lot. They're saving a lot.
Okay.
It's city of Evanston is quite unique in how many elm trees it has still on streets because of the treatment process.
And how quickly do these grow?
Elm trees are relatively quick growers. Yeah, they'll put on a couple inches probably per year.
Okay. I mean, I think we just need, as a committee, to set a clear direction for ourselves. So if we don't want to approve any additional variations until we have a rubric or whatever we want to call it, then we should say that and start working on it.
I guess I'll chime in. Since I would personally be okay with accepting the variation. I know there was some concern early on about setting a precedent. We will probably get, if this is like a 2% hit rate on variation requests, we will probably get one of these every 3-4 months. This is what I can't remember. Can staff speak to when we first heard this application? Because my internal calendar is.
Yeah, I think the tree permit came in August. Yeah, and then I actually went back out twice so I could meet with the property owner. Or I went back out once and they weren't there, and I went back out again. So I believe the variation request came in last October, September, October.
Okay. It looks, and Councilmember
I have one
Burns.
other question. The other I can't remember them offhand. We've granted how many variations to date?
Only 2 applications so far.
But we haven't granted any.
No.
Okay.
One was denied in
Thought
February.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that does leave us since we haven't granted.
I mean,
It leaves us at a good point to where if we're gonna do something that ensures we can grant these in a way that can be fairly and evenly applied to everyone, this would be the time to do it.
So, not sure where we're going to land here. I will say, based on the fact that this has been kind of delayed for the homeowner, I hope that we'd take action on this. I'm curious, though. It seems like we're kind of, based on comments, we would be at a 2-2 vote, which could legal speak to how that would work? Would that move on to City Council then for determination if we have a 2-2 tie on this?
I don't believe it would, because then you wouldn't have a majority. You could make a motion to table this vote until you have a rubric to a date certain. So you could do that as a alternative if you have a 2-2. But I don't believe you'd be able to move it forward to committee, to council, if you have a tied vote.
And And so it would move on with, I guess Councilmember Harris had a good point, with no recommendation.
Yeah, you could also make a motion to move it to city council with no recommendation.
And I think that we should have, even though it will definitely get a vote there. I think that's probably, my concern is just that if we delay this again when, ask for a rubric, is that going to be 2-3 months? I think there's some desire to have kind of closure on this. Do I have a...
Just real quick for the motion. I mean, the reason why I asked how quickly they grow, we're talking a few inches a year. So, whatever concerns there are, we have time to address them, or the owner has time to address them. So I don't think we have to make a decision right now. I would support that motion, though, not necessarily just to get a vote, but so we can also discuss creating a rubric or some additional guidelines to help us make these decisions fairly. So I would support moving it on for that discussion to happen.
Okay. So someone want to make that motion, or should I?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to, what are we on, HS3, to move HS3 forward to council with no recommendation.
Councilman, if I can add.
Sure.
I think that the sequence of events here is, if we're not able to make a decision in human services, that he actually goes to the city manager, that the individual can actually issue an appeal, so to speak, and it goes to the city manager, and the city manager then makes a decision. And if that's appealed, then it actually goes to city council. And that's the way I'm interpreting the ordinance.
Okay, I think that's...
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. So, do we need to have a show of a potential stalemate vote in order to do that, or what's the correct procedural thing to do here?
And real quick, let me make sure I understand this. Are you saying that this committee alone has the authority to either approve or deny this item? So in some sense, it's a little improper for it to go to council right now. I mean, we obviously could make a motion, as we have, to send it there, but the way this works is we decide yay or nay, and then it could be appealed to the city manager, and then it could be appealed again to city council.
That's the way I read it, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Members of the Human Services Committee, Noel Rodriguez, Public Services Bureau Chief. I do want to add that that appeal would have to take place within 5 days of this decision. Just want to make sure that's clear to go to the city manager.
But we'd have to vote yea or nay for it to be appealed, though.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. And so maybe we just send it for discussion and not necessarily for action. We're just trying to seek input from our colleagues on council. 'Cause it sounds like we need to take action first, not council. But we could still move it for discussion so that they could provide input on the rubric and everything else.
So, do we have a motion for that then?
Yeah. Does that sound right? So I would basically say I would move HS3 to council for discussion of the rubric or additional guidelines that we may add, but just discussion, not for action, because we have to vote on it here first.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's here for action, so we have to take some action.
Well, yeah, that's true. I guess we could table this, as I think was the.
Yeah, I think you can table it, but I don't know that you can just directly forward it on to city council. I'm reading the city code right now, and as it stands, it can, if you were to deny the variance, then it could be reviewed by the city manager and then forwarded to city council, but there's no direct route to city council for input, basically. So you either have to approve, deny, or table it to a date certain. That's basically the options that you have.
So I would recommend, Chair, that we table it then, and then we could get it on a council agenda for discussion. I'm sure we can work with Mayor Biss on that. We don't need official action from this committee to do that.
Well,
So-
I think that if we send it to city council, they're going to have the same kind of discussion. And they'll be starting from scratch in terms of, I'm I'm not sure what that would accomplish, having.
I'm saying the simple thing I'm saying now is that we can vote on this without any additional guidelines or direction.
Right.
We can do that right now, and I have how I will vote. But if we're seeking, if we're willing to consider adding in more a rubric or creating additional guidelines to help make these decisions, we can either come up with that as a committee. We can ask staff to come up with it. That's another thing we could do, or we can get some input from our colleagues on council, or we could do all three of those things. So,
Or we could have a 2-2 vote or whatever, and it goes to the city manager, and the city manager can make a decision, and then that could get appealed to city council and get the city council eventually.
Just a point of clarification from our legal staff. So this is being made, I apologize to the, but this is being made difficult because we're likely going to have a 2-2 tie. So would that still, if it were a tie with no recommendation, that could still be appealed to the city manager?
So I wish that the city code was more clear on this, but it just says approve or deny, and then it goes to the city manager. Yeah. So basically, if there's a vote to deny, then it goes to the city manager. But there's nothing in the code currently, unfortunately, that provides for what happens if there's a tied vote on a tree variance. So my suggestion from a parliamentary perspective is, if you are still considering a motion to table, that you make that vote first and see how that goes, and then do the motion on the variance. So that would be my suggestion, but I apologize, but it just doesn't say that in the code, so I don't know how else we could do it.
Okay, so our correct procedure would be now to vote on the variation.
I think if there's any appetite for a motion to table to a date certain, then you would make that motion first. If that motion fails, then you would move to vote on the variance to approve or deny.
So, Councilmember Burns.
yeah, if we send it to the city manager, he has the same information we have, and so, which is very little on how to make these decisions, and so it seems unnecessary. So again, I will recommend that we table this. Let's huddle up, figure out how we want to handle these, and then we can discuss at our next meeting. It's a few inches a year. We're okay.
Okay.
And I'll point out at the next meeting, you'll have a different makeup of the committee.
That's true. So, okay.
Well, the next meeting is before we swear in the new council member, right? Is it?
No.
It won't be. Okay. Forgive me. Is it 12?
Okay.
Okay, we're done.
All right.
Okay. It's gonna be all right.
All right. So, do we have a motion on the table? A motion to table? Anyone?
Yeah, so I'll move to table HS3 to our next regular Human Services Committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, and can we have a vote on the motion?
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Herrick Harris?
Aye. The ayes have it. We will be hearing this again at our next meeting. Next up, we have
just members of the committee. So in order to create a rubric, we will probably need more time than that month. So just put that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Right,
Thanks for the information. Moving along, can we have a motion relevant to HS4?
I move for the resolution 32R25, approval of an honorary street name sign for the Honorable Liz Tisdall.
Second.
So ordinance has been properly moved. Do we have any discussion on this?
Just real briefly, I think
Marvell?
we heard very eloquently from members of the public about former Mayor Liz Tisdall. It's actually a little surprising that we haven't done this already. And she's been such a major figure for our community, done so many wonderful things for the community in many different roles: school board, alderman, and then as mayor. I just enthusiastically urge our support for this designation.
Councilmember Burns.
Okay, never mind. I wanted to make sure that our guests had the date of our next meeting, but I think that's being handled now. All right, we can continue.
Okay. All right. Seeing no. Oh, Councilmember Harris.
Yes, I'm highly in favor. I knew Liz back. I went to school with her daughter at the original King Lab on Foster Street and grew up with them. So I've known her quite a long time. And she's been an awesome asset to the community, how she thinks, how she moves, how she connects. And that's important, most definitely. Again, I never would have imagined we wouldn't have had a street in her name before now. So I am highly in favor in passing this.
Great. I think we're all enthusiastic up here, but let's make this official. And if we can take a vote, please.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Herrick Harris?
Aye. The ayes have it, and we will move on to HS5.
I move item HS5 for, what is this for? For action? For action, ordinance 33-025, amending Title I, Chapter 12, Fair Employment Practices.
Yep.
Do I got to read all?
You don't have to read it, I think.
Et cetera, et cetera.
We have a second from Eleanor, Councilmember Ravel. And do we have any discussion on this item?
I'm so confused.
Councilmember Ravel.
Well, I just had one question about looking at the definitions. I can find it. I was surprised to see age limited to individuals who are at least 40 years of age but less than 65 years of age. I mean, don't we worry about people younger than 40 years old and older than 65? So thanks.
Good evening, Chair Herrick Harris, members of the committee. I'm Liza Robertson-Young, Chief Legislative Policy Advisor. In answer to your question, Councilmember Ravel, that's in our existing code. If you wanted to think about changing that, that's a conversation we could have. But the ordinance in front of you tonight does not make any changes to age discrimination.
Yeah. So I was just wondering why we have that in our ordinance already that way.
That's how it's currently drafted. I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
But I could take a look at it and see how it intersects
I would
with
think
other.
we're concerned about human rights for people younger than that age or over 65 as well. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a deeper dive into that if that would be helpful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have any other discussion from the members of the committee? Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious how something like this would. Well, never mind. I don't want to. I support. I'll talk to Corporation Counsel. We don't need to discuss my question here. But no, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Looks like we are ready for a vote. Potentially.
Ready.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Herrick Harris?
Aye. The ayes have it, and HS5 will move forward to council. Next up on our agenda is HS6.
I move for the acceptance of ordinance 36025, amending Title I, Chapter 12, Fair Employment Practices, and all the titles with it.
Second.
All right, we have it properly moved. This was, I'll just speak very quickly on this. This was my referral. This came out of working with a language access work group with Commissioner Justina Morita. Recently, Cook County made this similar change to their human rights ordinances. And so we are, coming into alignment with them. And I think this is really important based on the fact that, we have residents that speak all languages, and we really need to have government work for everyone. So just happy that we have this on our agenda moving forward. So, any other discussion? Seeing none, can we, quick thing from staff.
Good evening, everyone. Allison Leipziger, Policy Manager. The one thing I want to point out is that you'll see the long list of parts of the code in both of those that have to be changed. It's the same. And so if you're open to it, if someone wouldn't mind making a motion that we could combine those two and bring them to council, because we're taking the same parts of code and changing them. One is they're just protecting two different things, but we could add them at the same time. And not only will that be just sort of cleaner, but it'll be also helpful on the administrative side, like through MuniCode. We're not giving them two ordinances and trying to have them figure out like how they interact with each other. If we could do both at the same time, that would be amazing. So if we could ask for a motion to combine one into the other and do them at the same time, then for the next council meeting, we can bring one ordinance instead of two.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Well, I move that we combine the two so they can be brought to the council at the same time.
Second.
Great. Any discussion on the motion to combine the two? Seeing none, can we take the vote?
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye. So the motion to combine the two ordinances items has passed. Do we need a vote on the
So I was
two?
gonna ask, is that like a
No.
do we
So
handle
now
that
we
as a
need-
substitute motion? Is
So-
that, or what do we do?
So I would need a motion to accept the combined ordinances.
Well, we had a
combined
motion
items.
on the floor, I think, already, right, or no? When we moved it for action?
I think we were already on HS6, so I think if you make a motion to vote for or against HS6, that should solve it. I don't think you have to make any other further motions. So I think you just have to, you've already agreed to combine them, so now you just have to make a motion with respect to HS6.
Great.
If that makes sense.
Okay, so now if we can take a vote now on HS6. I think there's no further comments on HS6.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye. Seeing we have the A's have it, we move HS6 forward in combination with HS5 to council. Now, moving forward on our agenda for items for discussion. Can I have a motion in relation to HS7?
Move item HS7, property tax circuit breaker.
Seeing that it's been properly moved forward, we'll open the floor for discussion. Councilmember Burns.
This was at finance already, right? In budget committee, Councilmember Kelly? Because I think somebody mentioned earlier that they wanted this at finance. I thought we already just. Okay. Is there, what do you need from this committee, I guess?
Councilmember Kelly, can you
sorry
come to
about that.
the dais, please, or the podium.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's really just important. We want to have this brought to the public, this concept, but I don't think there's really much from this committee at this point until we gather the data and we bring this back both here and to the Finance and Budget Committee. So
Perfect. Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah, and it, as I mentioned in the last when this was discussed at Finance and Budget Committee, from talking to Director Flax, Community Development Director, the idea is that something like this will be discussed as part of the strategic housing plan, which was paused, and I believe we're supposed to be discussing it again, I think this month. And I don't know if staff has that information soon. I thought it was going to be earlier than June. Oh, ACDC is June. Okay. So we'll figure that out. But it is important to me, and I think this committee, that we continue that work as soon as we can. So we'll get that information, and I think, again, this should be discussed as part of that. I do want to use this, though, as an opportunity to talk about some of the work that is being done already. The council passed, I think it was $850,000. I don't know if Ike was a part of this, but a rental subsidy program that has allowed us to prevent people from being displaced from the city of Evanston. So there are people in Evanston still living here today because of ARPA funding that we dedicated towards a rental subsidy program. And that program continues to help people stay here. It's administered by Connections for the Homeless. Another, I think, important aspect to this is we have existing affordable housing apartments or units that have affordability restrictions on them. And so we've been working for well over a year now through the Here to Stay committee that I started to try to make sure that that those properties don't flip to market rate. Because over time, once those affordability restrictions expire, over time, rents could go up, residents could be displaced. And we're talking about, between all the units that have expiring affordability restrictions that are owned by private developers, maybe upwards of 200 units. So maybe at least 200, 300 people that would be impacted by it. And so that work has been ongoing. We added a new source of funding, revenue for our affordable housing fund. And so we've had, it's been only funded by our demo tax and then the opt-out inclusionary housing opt-out fee, and we've added now the money from Northwestern 15, or from the agreement that was negotiated through Northwestern. So that's $15 million over the next 30 years, which is going to allow us to do some of the work that we're discussing today. We amended our inclusionary housing ordinance, and so now we require 15% in large developments, that 15% of the units be set aside for affordable housing. I think what I heard from staff is that because of some tax relief program that Cook County has, that many of the new large developments are going to do 20%, and that's what we're saying. I believe there was a building that is being discussed now in the first ward, used to be 404, now the first ward. From the article that I read, they have said that they're going to set aside 20%. I know Councilmember Kelly is trying to make sure that those units can be affordable in perpetuity. I've made a referral after Councilmember Kelly brought that up for us to discuss that. That is going to be discussed at, I think, an upcoming ACDC meeting, if you haven't been alerted to that yet, soon. But what we're seeing is I think what staff has discussed with us, that we're going to see a lot of developments on their own deciding to set 20% aside. That's happening in the first ward. I have a project right now that is going through the land use process. They're also opting on their own to do 20%. Some of them are smaller units, studios, 1 bedrooms. In my ward, they're putting in 3 bedrooms or 4 bedroom units. And so they'll look different in every project. And then, our health department right now, I don't know, a lot of people know this, but provides mortgage assistance for people who are financially burdened. And I don't think that's something that is discussed enough, but, council members as well as staff are very hands-on in helping people from being displaced It doesn't always get written about, but it's happening. I have personally referred many people to our health department who have been successfully providing mortgage assistance so that they can not only keep up with their taxes, but their mortgage. And again, they're in their homes today because of that program that already exists. And so, and there's quite a bit more that we're doing. So excited about what we're already doing, excited about our strategic housing planning process where we can think about a permanent subsidies, which is what this is. It's just a permanent subsidy. And we've talked about that already for homeowners. We've talked about it for rental providers or rental units. It's something that is already provided for renters through our through the Housing Choice Voucher Program, but we know the wait list for that is really long, and they only open up the application period every once in a while. So, need to discuss more who's eligible, under what circumstances, how the program will work. There's lots to discuss, which I think is why this is most appropriate to be discussed through our strategic housing planning process. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Revelle.
Well, I think as Councilmember Burns just indicated, there's a lot of details about this program that need to be discussed and worked out. And I guess I would suggest that it go to HCDC, just as because that's where we're having a lot of discussions about displacement programs and the strategic housing plan. So that I would recommend that we send it to HCDC.
Yeah, I would. I'll chime in and say yes. I think that's for folks out there. I think that's one committee where we do a real deep dive into the details. Obviously, as I get older, like I know more about aging in place, and have family members that helping out, navigate that, and I think. It's with a lot of displacement talk, it's really hard to get the numbers right, because I know anecdotally it is definitely happening. So trying to figure out what percentage of folks are like cost burdened by property taxes. I didn't get a chance to really dive in, but just before the meeting we got some more census data from staff, and then I was just about to hop out the house, but Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, just one. We have collected a lot of data already from the county assessor's office and others, so we will present that. But also, I believe I did pass an ordinance to sign a DA, right? So I know some of the new council members that have been elected are very interested in co-sponsoring, and since I know Councilmember Revelle, a couple of our we've had 4 sponsoring this, so that will change since the new council, I believe, will take seat on the 28th, right, of this month. So I think this will come forward with a different configuration. I'll continue to lead on this, but I look forward to collaborating with some of the new council members also. So I don't know if it's really worth deciding right now the path for this, as I expect this to come forward again, probably to finance a budget with a new, as a new referral in a sense. Thank you.
So do we not want to move it on, or what?
I think the reality is that this is not. It's not a one-off issue because we're already engaged in the strategic housing planning process. If we weren't engaged in a Vision Evanston, for example, it would make sense to have a working group about a standalone zoning issue. But because we're having this conversation about comprehensive plan in Vision Evanston, I haven't seen us allow kind of a working group outside of that process to form and work on things. I think it could be very confusing and not particularly productive. And so I think if this was at the ACDC committee, and obviously you should be there, Councilmember Kelly, we can just discuss how is this going to be folded into the strategic housing planning process. That would be my question for staff. I think it's, again, it is a permanent subsidy. It's really as simple as that. We subsidize rental units. We've already talked about subsidizing homeowners. It's something we've talked about. The question is, how is it going to be properly folded into the strategic housing planning process so that we're not having these siloed discussions? And I think Director Flax and the ACDC committee can help, and along with your input, can help us figure that out. So that's what I would want to see.
Okay. Any more comments up here?
sorry. I move that we refer this item to HCDC for to determine the details and finalize the program.
Chair Hadakais? Okay. So I know at the Finance and Budget Committee, Bobby, you had a problem. You didn't want this to come before the strategic housing plan. And we don't want this to be like it's some sort of competition for that money from Northwestern. That's not what we want to do. I think this is totally different from what you're doing. And I don't want this to go into what Ravel is proposing and it goes there to die.
Yeah, so that's not consistent with what I'm saying.
There's enough money for these to be separate.
Yeah, and so that's.
We're in a building right now that's over 30 million. We got the money to do this and then do this. They don't have anything to do with each other. Separate. The money is separate. We got the money. I'm sorry, Chair Hadakais. I'm sorry.
Okay. Councilmember Burns.
The Affordable Housing Fund is just a fund. It's a pot of money. And so what the Strategic Housing Plan is going to allow us to do is determine how we want to use those funds. And so I'm not trying to put two things together. They're not together. They don't, other than the Affordable Housing Fund, not just the money that was secured through the Northwestern discussions, but the Affordable Housing Fund can fund whatever priorities council approves. This could be one of them. And so what I'm saying is that what has been described to me by our community development director, who's over that fund, is that what she would like to see, and I think council would agree, is that a strategic housing planning process should determine how affordable housing funds are prioritized, how much will go towards a program like this, how much will go towards any other number of programs that will come out of that process. And so that's all I'm saying is that we've already started that journey. The question to staff is how can we incorporate this discussion into the strategic housing discussion? I've never mentioned any battle of money. That hasn't come out of my mouth.
Oh, you mentioned that at the finance and budget. That's why I'm even coming up here, because you planted the seed that you do not want this to come before any of what you're doing with the strategic housing. I'm like, it's separate. There's enough money for everybody. Yeah. And it'd be great if we did get data from staff. It's funny they gave you all data, but we haven't gotten any.
Yeah, so I want it to happen. I think we should move on after. But I think it should happen. I want it to happen simultaneously, so not before. There's nothing, it can't compete with a fund that could potentially fund it. So I just want to see it discussed at the same time.
What do you mean it can't compete?
I wanted to see it discussed at the same time as we're discussing every other potential priority or proposal through our strategic housing planning process. So I don't see this at odds with it at all. I think it's something that could work with it, that could be funded by it, in fact. I just think we need to discuss it through our strategic housing planning process, which is underway. It has been delayed, and that's why I said what I would want to know from staff is like, when are we going to start that process? Because I could see the community saying, we don't want to wait on that process if we're not going to have that discussion for another 6 months. And I would agree with that, but we don't have time to wait another 6 months to determine how we're going to use these funds. Whether it come from Affordable Housing Fund, whether it come from our general reserve funds, doesn't matter. We need to start that process. And so we can get back to you even before the ACDC conversation as to when that discussion would happen.
Okay, I appreciate that, Councilmember Burns. We are in an urgent state, and I've seen City Council move on things really fast that make no sense whatsoever and spend tons of money. We're in an urgent situation with our residents who are really concerned with aging in place. I mean, and in speaking to the staff that was allowed to speak to us, there's people under the age of 65. I mean, their work value, the money just isn't going as far in Evanston anymore. So it's urgent right now, and especially with the administration, the new administration with Trump, it is urgent right now. So we don't have time for it to go through all of these different committees and programs where it'll probably die because there's more money in new development than there is in saving the people who have been here and have made the land here valuable, that the developers want to come in here and just, build up. which we don't want to stop the progress. We don't want to stop that progress, but we want to look out for those who have been here for decades. And it's urgent. So we don't want to wait. I don't want the people to wait 6 months. I don't want it to be behind other programs in the strategic housing or the other program that Ravel is saying send it to, where I do believe is going to die. If it went there, it's going to die there.
Yeah, it's a committee that discusses housing issues.
We're in a situation where we can work on this with staff. I mean,
So
this is about the people. So, I mean, if you got something to do, something else to do. But look, it's about the people. It's about the people. We can do this and all of what Bobby is doing, which is great. I think what he's doing is great with the strategic housing. That be done there too. But we can do this now. And get the data and move it forward and fund it. We have other ways to fund it than just the Northwestern Affordable Housing. Thank you, Chair Hadakais. I'll leave from there.
So here's, and so I was reminded by staff that we don't have to do any motion. This was for discussion.
Yeah.
So one thing that, so the three of us, Councilmember Ravel and Burns and myself, sit on HCDC. We have been discussing housing plans and housing mainly on the RLTO and the inclusionary housing. One of the things that we've been talking about with displacement has been how the city interacts with like our emergency funds and what qualifies. And one of the things that it doesn't qualify for relief is property tax relief. And there's many reasons for that. It's, you know, we're not in, you know, the assessor's, you know, office sets for property taxes, you know, all these things. Like, we also only get 17% of every property tax dollar. So, you know, this is something that we've discussed, that we would like to be able to help people who are struggling with their property taxes. What does that look like? How do people qualify? I think regardless of what happens tonight, this is going to be a topic of discussion in our committee. We don't have I don't know why you'd want it, Councilmember Kelly, want to have it come to finance again, because I think the motion earlier was like to table it, so we wouldn't be doing anything. I think is that what?
Yeah, that's correct, because we do have a lot of data already that I would like to present, but not tonight. We're still waiting for more so that it's complete. I also think ultimately it's going to be the new sitting city council that's going to decide on the direction. I do also concur with Ms. Gardner that this is something that needs to be addressed immediately. I think people are very frustrated with a lot of the talk of affordable housing for new people, while there are people here that are already, you know, being displaced on a regular basis. So I think it really needs to be left up. We're about to start this same month. A new council is going to be seated. So I don't really think it's appropriate it's going to change course at any rate because of the Sign ADA ordinance. So that's why I said I didn't think there was really anything for you to do with this tonight.
I think we've already had a discussion. I've made it kind of clear where I'm at with this, and then to Councilmember Kelly's point, ultimately the council will decide what direction we want to go in. So I think we've discussed it.
So we're just okay. Yeah. Fine. I guess we're done then.
I have just
one thing for Director Ogbo.
Absolutely. This is just an announcement. We have a program that is a long-standing program in Evanston. It's called WOW. We disseminated information pertaining to this program about 2 weeks ago. We do have a kickoff on April 25th at ETHS, and I'm hoping that everyone who is listening would register and participate in the program. It is a 16-week program where individuals are tasked to engage in physical activities, nutrition, and healthy lifestyle. So I'm hoping that everyone will register for it. Currently, we have quite a number of registrants, and I'm hoping that we will increase that number. That's it.
Great. And if you have information, I'll put in my newsletter.
Absolutely.
Yep. Excellent. So seeing no further business, meeting is adjourned.